This is a battlefront, and I need soldiers.
Because our governor and the mayor of Chicago are practically running a referral service for abortion, telling businesses to move here because we'll kill your children, telling women to come here because we'll kill your children, without any parallel support for anyone who chooses life. So it's up to us. And actually, just a couple days ago, Eric and Amy Gerke from Illinois Right to Life had an extensive lunch meeting talking about strategies and how we can move forward in this post-Roe era. Somebody said to me the other day, "Are you still going to be busy now that Roe was overturned?" And I found it disheartening because our objective has never been to get rid of Roe v. Wade. Our objective is to get rid of abortion. And the fact that some states near us, like Indiana, have extremely restrictive laws now doesn't mean that women in Indiana all of a sudden won't be looking for abortions. So life support initiatives are going to be even more important than ever before. So, God bless you for being willing to be part of this very, very important initiative. Prayer is so important in the whole element of sidewalk counseling. And to start our discussion of sidewalk counseling, I would like us to pray together the serenity prayer. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You can probably see why I think that is a good prayer for the sidewalk counselor. Because when we come out to the sidewalk, there's a whole lot that we can't do anything about. There's a lot of history behind this woman showing up at the clinic long before you encounter her. So we must accept that there are a lot of things we cannot change, but we do need the courage to step out and try to do what we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The what can we do, what can we not do. Importantly, you have to understand what sidewalk counseling actually is. Now, we don't really need the slides if this doesn't work. Sidewalk counseling is not a picket, it is not a rally, and it is not a march. It's a whole separate ministry. People used to say to me, because I was going to the clinics on regular basis, "Are you going out picketing today?" No, I am not. And I love a picket. I love a demonstration. I do the Face the Truth tours. Wednesday night I was out protesting at a personal pack event that J.B. Pritzker was the guest speaker out in Highland Park at a super glorious mansion, rich person supporting abortion. I love that stuff. But that is not what sidewalk counseling is. Sidewalk counseling is a compassionate outreach to a woman in crisis. And it is a witness to the dignity of the unborn baby. And as important, it is a reminder to us, the sidewalk counselors, the people on the sidewalk, of the reality of abortion. Every abortion involves a real baby and a real mother. And sometimes when we hear the statistics, we forget that. I know a lot of people who are pro-life and who are avidly pro-life have never actually been to an abortion clinic. Is there anybody in the room here who has not ever yet been to an abortion clinic? Well, God bless you for coming. I remember the first time I watched a woman walk into an abortion clinic. As Joe said, was it you that said, I've done this forever? Almost forever. My husband and I got involved in the pro-life movement slightly before Roe v. Wade, but he had come out of the civil rights movement and really believed in public protest. And we were at a protest, a regular picket with picket signs walking around in a loop. at a clinic called Concord on Grand Avenue in Chicago. And there were probably about 30 of us. And a woman came, and she had to walk through the picket line to get to the door. And because we were walking in a loop, she had to walk through it twice to get to the door. I had never seen a woman walk into an abortion clinic before. And here she came, all by herself, and she walked through our line, and this particular clinic had sort of a granite wall around it. It was a very fortress-looking place. So, and it was painted dark gray. It was really a very imposing kind of a place. She walked through and she goes in there, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Here was this woman who probably was pregnant. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but she's going to an abortion clinic. And when she comes out, she's not going to be pregnant anymore. That baby is going to be dead. And I was floored. I just couldn't imagine somebody doing that. I had, when Roe v. Wade came down, I was pregnant with my fourth child. So she was like a baby, a little baby at this point. Well, she's probably about a year old or so. And she was with me at the clinic, because my kids always had to come with us to all this stuff. So I realized at that point, we got to do better than picketing. We have to find some way to let these women know there's support out there. So I wasn't the first person to do sidewalk counseling. This was happening other places, but it was my realization that this is something we really, really need to do. So that was the beginning of starting a different approach, of going to the clinics to offer support, to offer alternatives. So one of the things you need to do is, of course, to learn everything you can about abortion, about fetal development, about the alternatives to abortion, the resources available. So you've got some homework to do. I'm going to dispense with bothering with that screen anymore.
So try the remote that we plugged in the Logitech.
Okay. Okay. So who's best suited to be a sidewalk counselor? Everyone with a compassionate heart. So, you know, young women, teens, mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers, men, women, anyone who is compassionate and has a heart for these women and their babies. So, I think everybody in this room qualifies, right? But before you go, you will have some homework to do. And one of the things is to learn the details of fetal development. I have on the table back there a bunch of copies of this Life Before Birth brochure, which is a really excellent little thing to have with you at the clinic, and also to educate yourself, because it's got all the facts on fetal development. I also brought a copy of Sharing the Pro-Life Message, enough of these for everyone to take a copy home, and those are on that table where you first came in. It has a whole section on fetal development. It has a section on the different types of abortion, and a section on Planned Parenthood, a section on your legal rights, all things that are very handy to have at your fingertips. You can check, you know, for anytime you have a question or you forget a detail or something. So grab a copy of that if you didn't already pick it up when you came in. But learn a few of the details of fetal development to have just, you know, to roll off your tongue quickly. Like some of these, the brain waves can be detected at 6 weeks. Baby's heart has been beating since 3 weeks. In case you actually get an opportunity to talk to a woman, and we'll get to the fact that that's relatively rare, but you want to have something to say in case it does happen. And you want to be able to relate some of these details about the humanity of this little baby. So just a few of the little details of fetal development, all of which is in all of this other material. So pick a few facts, commit them to memory, and just, you know, have those available in your repertoire. And then you want to learn about the primary abortion methods. About 50% or slightly more than 50% of abortions now are chemical abortions, which makes it a little bit more difficult for us as sidewalk counselors, because they're going to go in there and probably take the first pill in the clinic and take the second pill at home on their own and have that abortion, their home becomes their abortion clinic. So one of the resources that's really good to have is information on abortion pill reversal, which I have cards on that on the back table over there too. This is really, really important because there's a high success rate with reversing the abortion pill and the baby being able to go full term.
Excuse me. Do you think it would be worthwhile to have a sign that says abortion pill reversal?
Yeah, very definitely.
Do they respond to like a sign with a phone number? Do you think, or a website?
Or a text number?
Yeah,
on
text.
it. Yeah. And I had a like a sandwich type sign I would bring out to Milwaukee Avenue that had, what did it say on it, Mary Beth? It was, it may not be too late. I think it said it may not be too late.
And the phone number.
And the phone number to call.
Are these abortion pills only available through these clinics, or can now you order them on the internet?
They have them available, but I think you still, don't you still, Laura, need to have a prescription or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, they dispense.
I mean, it's-
The first one's always given at a clinic, and yeah, but
Yeah.
they want them, they are trying to get them
Yeah.
through.
But in some states, they already have the telemed thing and,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that's going to be
Yeah, and
increasingly.
their dream is the, bathroom dispensers or something.
Exactly,
Like
yes.
vending machines.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
their push.
In fact, I think that was a bill that was in Springfield that didn't pass, was vending machine abortion pills for college campuses.
Probably didn't pass just because of the lawsuit issues,
Yeah.
They're only fears and lawsuits, right?
So we don't have telemed abortions here. They have to go into the clinic. They're not doing telemed here.
I don't believe they're doing them in Illinois
I think that I know of.
that we know of, yeah.
Not saying that some doctors aren't doing it though.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible that doctors are doing it, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
possibly.
I mean, there's probably a lot of abortions that are happening in private doctors' offices. I mean, I know as Mark pointed out that reporting requirements are fairly vague in Illinois. Nonetheless, we do know that there's, I think in 2020 or 2021, like 46,000 abortions, about 10,000 of those were out of state. And Missouri, Planned Parenthood opened their most recent clinic in Illinois, in Fairview Heights, Illinois. So there will be a terrific influx of out-of-state abortions here. It's probably a higher number than, the official IDPH reports because I think it's just voluntary reporting. So the numbers may be higher than they look. Let's see. And you need to find out about the abortion clinic that you're going to be counseling at, what kinds of abortions they do there. Like, for instance, there's one in Skokie called Carafem, which does exclusively chemical abortions. Then there's Family Planning Associates on Washington Avenue downtown, which does very late-term abortions, theoretically to 24 weeks, but we know that they do them at least to 26. And of course, there's no restrictions on how long they will do them. So, if you can find a doctor who will do it later, they'll be happy to. Finding out when,
And there's an update on the Aurora Clinic. They are doing abortions through up to the 22nd week.
are they in Aurora?
That was confirmed by a phone call.
Ah,
Yes, so that's
so,
unfortunate, that's 5 months. So-
yeah. And I think,
And they were never.
we all know stories of babies who were born at that point and survive. I mean, one of my daughter's best friends had a baby born at 26 weeks, and he's 6 years old now, flourishing, just no problems at all. And other babies are killed at that point. So, you know, it's a terrific tragedy. It's a tragedy at any state, but when you see that the callousness of the abortion industry, when we were protesting at this home in Highland Park the other day, I was holding that sign that says Roe is history, along with Emily Iverson. And if you know Emily, Emily's very verbal. And so everybody that came all dressed up to this lovely little party, she'd say, "Are you going to the abortion party?" You know, they kill babies up to the day of birth here in Illinois. And there were actually women, you know, nicely dressed, older women, younger women. Yeah, we know, that's why we're here. We support that.
They're bracing.
You know, it's very disheartening to see women behave that way. So anyway, thanks for that information on Aurora. It's important to know how late they'll do it.
Why do these clinics do that cutoff time?
It may be what the doctor happens to be comfortable with. It may be what backup facilities they have in the clinic. Won't be their license, because you know, there used to be some sort of licensing. It was all Illinois was always a little weird in the licensing department, but.
And the physical difficulty of performing such a procedure, you've got more complications, and they just don't want to deal with it. They want to get their quick, easy money and be done with it.
Yeah, because those later ones involve a couple of days, sometimes
Right.
3 days.
Right.
So, you know, maybe your clinic's not open every day, so you can't do a procedure that starts on Friday and ends on Saturday.
And remember, these doctors are not creating a relationship with these patients. They only see them when they are sedated with their legs up in a stirrup. And they're done with that.
Yeah.
And it's up to the nurse practitioner or the nurses or even a CNA to deal with their vitals or whatever. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. So
they don't want that relationship.
they don't want a relationship.
They
No,
just
no,
want to
they-
get it done, get it over with, be done.
And they'll even tell her, if you have any kind of complications, don't
Right.
call us.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Go to the emergency
Go to the
room.
emergency room, that's exactly it.
And I don't want to interrupt you. because I
Oh,
know you're
do
on
it,
a
because you're
break.
supposed to be doing this.
Okay.
So, all right.
And I think I'm projecting. I just came back from Houston, Texas, where I attended a 40 Days for Life symposium. And there was a woman there that was one of the guest speakers, and she was an ex-clinic director for Planned Parenthood. And obviously, these people are very, she's now on our side, are very motivated to share stories and details. And not to embellish this, but I will tell you the fact. Sure. A fact that came out was, and since we're on this topic, the chemical abortion. They are required, correct me ladies if I'm standing corrected, after the second pill is taken, they do return for a follow-up visit, correct? Okay, so there's some accountability to the clinic to see these women through this. If in fact they come back and they're not successfully aborted or there's some issues or complications, they will perform a free abortion on them at that point, surgical. These details are not noted. They don't want it noted. It is not recorded. It is under the wire. So we do not know how many successful abortions are happening with the chemical abortion. So it's all very dicey and very gray.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
All right. So that's all I wanted to add there.
And I believe that when they sign up to do the chemical abortion, they also have to sign that they're willing to go through the surgical abortion should that chemical abortion fail. So, I suppose most of you probably saw that movie Unplanned, which had the scene in it about the chemical abortion.
And if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth seeing. And then, when you are pretty sure you know what the abortion hours are, you might never get the doctor's name. That's very difficult to find out.
Not anymore because of removal of that licensing requirement.
Yeah. And it always used to be pretty much of a secret anyway,
Yeah,
if they could keep it secret. And one of the reasons they don't want them to know the doctor's name is that they're afraid that pro-lifers might actually publish the doctor's name or perhaps wander through his neighborhood with some information on the fact that he's an abortionist. We used to be able to do that quite a bit. And what types of abortions they perform in that particular clinic. And now the really important resource material. Where are the local pregnancy centers closest to the clinic you're going to be counseling at? And what services are in fact provided there? Because you don't want to make promises that can't be kept. You want to be sure that if you tell them they can get an ultrasound there, that's actually a fact. Because not every pregnancy center has an ultrasound machine. So, good idea is to get to know the director and maybe go and have a tour of the pregnancy center so that you get a sense and you feel like you can speak knowledgeably about this is what they can provide for you over at this center. Do they have someone who speaks Spanish? Do they have someone who speaks Polish? You know, these are important things to know because you may encounter someone who English is not their first language. They're not going to be all that comfortable speaking to a counselor, except in their own, you know, native first language. So it's really important to know what those services are, what facilities they have, and that you know your rights. Because sidewalk counseling is a protected right, protected by the First Amendment. And you can, you know, free speech doesn't depend on the person wanting to hear you. Free speech is your right to say it. If they don't want to hear you, they can walk away. But it's our right to be able to speak on a public sidewalk. Some people thought when the FACE Act was passed, which I think was 1995, that prohibited sidewalk counseling. Absolutely not. It prohibits blocking the entrance to an abortion clinic, but not speaking anywhere near the entrance to the abortion clinic. We in Chicago do have a bubble zone, but the rest of the state does not. So you don't have to pay any attention to where you are standing. You actually don't have to pay any attention to it in Chicago either because it's such a stupid law that no one understands it. There is a law that within 8 feet of a person entering the clinic, within 50 feet of the entrance, you can't approach. But if you're just standing somewhere and a person approaches, then you haven't approached. They've approached. We were down at Planned Parenthood in Chicago one time, and the escorts there were trying to tell the police about the bubble zone and how, you know, we couldn't be there, and so the policeman starts to come over and tell me that, but I really, really know this bubble zone law very well, and so I explained to him what the law actually was, and then I hear him go and tell the escorts, go talk to her, she knows. So we have tried to get rid of that bubble zone law because the Supreme Court did not get rid of them entirely, and it will go. It will go one of these days, but not quite yet. Mm-hmm.
Has anyone been arrested under that bubble zone law? Or fined or whatever?
No, not really. A couple of people have been cited, but not actually convicted of it, and now that the police don't even bother. We had a big mediation thing with the federal court on the bubble zone law, and the outcome was that the Chicago police are supposed to train their officers on how this law is actually supposed to be applied. But we know that that's not happening because so often they show up and they have no clue what the law says.
So it's not something we need to be concerned about?
No. I mean, if you go down to Washington Street, the escorts will have a sign out there telling, saying that there's a bubble zone and that we're not allowed to approach them, but it isn't true, and the police don't bother about it anyway.
Thank you.
So, it's okay. So I think we need to get into talking about actual approaches to I don't think we'll skip by the business of whether to use signs or not, permit, need help. And text counseling, some of the pregnancy centers will have a text number that you could use, and giving a little card to a person with the text number can be very handy, because a lot of times if you do get material into the hands of a woman, they'll take it away from her when they, either a security guard or an escort or a clinic employee will take it away. So if I get a chance, I would say stick this in your purse and don't let them take it away from you.
Always, because we all know it's so easy to wag a finger at somebody and say you shouldn't do that. God forbid you're in that situation, but you shouldn't have got there, and you shouldn't, and that's it. Life isn't so black and white, is it ever? In any of the circumstances. So what's the alternative? We're called to be people who not only provide education and counseling and insight and prayer. These are the givens. These are just the stepping stones of what we're supposed to be doing. Concrete alternatives, though. What about that? We also must provide alternatives. How do we help? We've got the bags. We've got many other ways, word of mouth, getting stuff into people's hands. Because if a person, only knows, if a woman only knows, well, this is my only alternative. It becomes very narrow. And we know there are enough people steering that conversation that are driving that train, as is the darkness itself. We have to provide alternatives, and certainly there are any number of them. One of them that I'm personally involved with a great deal is Aid for Women, but that's not the only one. There are many things. There are many ways, many informational systems out there, many ways we get concrete things, because we know that the harsh reality is that if someone is intent on having an abortion, they will find a place and a person, or a back alley, or chemicals, the way they're being so easily gained now for chemical abortions. Whatever it takes. And I realize too, I'm not a fool, that even if all of, in an ideal world, all of the abortion clinics, will be shuttered, it will certainly help to diminish the numbers, but it's not going to solve entirely the problem. So how, again, it's an ongoing thing, an unfolding of how we help, how we work, how we change hearts, how we provide concretely alternatives. And we just simply need to keep working on that. And just a second point, the culture of death is insidious. It's its very nature, it's not of God. And always, because of the nature, the craft of darkness, the craft of the culture of death, is that it continues to evolve and to morph. It's its nature to blend, to change itself, to repackage itself, so that people continue to be drawn in, regardless of how we try to point a light, shine a light on it, bring attention to it. It's as quickly as it changes. And one of the things that has struck me most recently, and this is as much a reflection for ourselves, myself. Just reading a good article recently, and it said that, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the insidiousness of the destruction of human life has not miraculously been vanquished. I said at the beginning, that. It has only been forced to change. It's only been forced to morph one more time. And now, one of the things which I'm sure you're familiar with are the number of major corporations that are adding abortion travel costs, for instance, to their employee benefits. So the goal is to ensure that their employees can seek abortion care if they live in the states where the procedure is now or soon will be illegal. It's become a benefit. So again, it's just one, and that's just one small example. But it kind of leapt off the page. I wasn't even thinking of that. Fortunately, there's good, solid, investigations and, people that are trying to raise these things to the surface. And so it becomes as much a personal reflection within our own hearts. I mean, the list is extensive of those who are providing already these employee benefits. I'm just going to tick off a few: Amazon, Bank of America, Citigroup, Comcast, CVS Health, Dick's Sporting Goods, Estee Lauder, Goldman Sachs, Hewlett-Packard, IKEA, JP Morgan, Kroger, Microsoft, Starbucks, Target, Walt Disney, and on and on and on. I've got a list of 30. It's a fact. It's a reality. But again, the culture of death is just that. It continues to worm its way into those, who are fighting for life and preserving life and protecting life and stuff. So again, we too have to then choose in concrete ways. Well, what do we support? In a sense, some might be very strong, focused in saying, well, things we should boycott, we should do this, we should do that. Certainly, again, like all things, you inform the conscience and the heart has to follow. You provide the information and then you have to discern to say, what's on my heart to do? Can I support these organizations, these situations, whatever the case may be? Now, God forbid, will there be any left standing? Because we also know the push, the strength of, of some of these lobbying effects, some of, all of these different types of things. But, ultimately, I believe the consumer does have some say, in a sense, if products, if companies are not being supported. And again, it's just one element, one piece of this whole puzzle. As you all know, in 1995, now St. John Paul II, in his Gospel of Life, he said, human life is sacred and invaluable at every moment of existence, including the initial phase which precedes birth. The threat of abortion is not only a preeminent priority to be addressed, but it's foundational. It's at the very base of things. If life isn't able to be created and come into existence, there's not much after that, huh? You don't get much of a run if you don't have the inception and the beginning of life. Everything else is contingent upon that. And so, we have to continue to support and fight for life so that it can flourish. But what happens when it never comes to light? So, each of us has a role to play. Again, in a sense, we discern, we search, we try to figure out our own course. But I believe that God is in the mix too. God always has been, God always will be. Each age is given the challenge of what it's going to speak against. The church, in all of the ages that she's existed, has always had to stand up and speak to the untruths. However the destruction of life has taken place, and many, many other things. So just like I said, just a couple of thoughts. And again, I'm just simply grateful to have the opportunity to come, to be with you, to chat for a few moments.
Again, I am Kathy Bozick, and I served for 23 years at Southside Pregnancy Center on the south side of Chicago. I started there as a volunteer, and I did counseling, crisis counseling for the young women, and it wasn't long, and I came on staff, and I built up programs for the clients, the young women, the young men. I recruited volunteers and trained all of those volunteers, and then the last 14 years of my stint there, I was the executive director and I led that ministry. I retired about a year and a half ago, and so I am almost exclusively just Vision 2020 Illinois now with the amount of time that God has given me. I'm not sitting down, I'm not stepping back. My 23 years of pregnancy center land isn't the end of it. God never puts us out to pasture. There's always something that can be done. There's always prayer that can be done. I don't know where this is gonna go. I think I got 4 or 5 pages here, but I know we're running late, and I'm gonna try and shave as much time as I can. I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like for a woman facing a crisis pregnancy. I want to talk a little bit about the emotional aftermath. Now, some of these things have already been discussed, so maybe we'll go into a little more detail, maybe we won't. I definitely will give you a few statistics if my slides are working, and is this the little...
That should work.
The little booger that's been giving everybody trouble. I'm not ready for a slide yet, but if that doesn't happen, we don't necessarily need it. All of this will be able to be sent to you electronically too, if you like. Okay, so what kind of woman is it who can abort her baby? I mean, honestly, let's think about that. I know a lot of people believe that she's heartless, she's cruel, she's selfish, she's evil, and I think sometimes we believe that, or we have to palate what's going on, what we know, like what Ann said. This woman, I saw her go in and come out, and she knew what the effect of that was. It's hard on your heart to do that. It's hard to be in pregnancy center ministry and talk to these young ladies and know the road that they're on is a cliff, that they're gonna fall off, and you're trying all your best to give them every other option that they would grab onto and run from. And some of them do, but so many don't. So recently, there's been a story in the news, and it's about the Middle Eastern man who killed his 2 daughters, and he's been on the run for 10 years, and they finally captured him. So that reminded me of a story that happened in the pregnancy center. A young Arab student came, and she was just frantic, and her test was positive, and she had explained that her dad was very strict in their religion and that he would kill her, literally. Now, we've seen thousands of young ladies come in and go, my parents will kill me. We know what they meant. I'm scared, you know. But this girl, her parent, was literally going to kill her if it was revealed that she had been sexually active, and no less, that she was pregnant. So I just remember her, the room was just so filled with her fear. I mean, I could just feel it all over her. And I loved everything that was being said here about the presence of the Holy Spirit and how dependent we all are on that. And I was so dependent on that in that room. And I remember she was just, I can't get her out of my head. She was just beside herself. And I'm frantically in my mind thinking, you know, all the things that I would have told other young ladies, and try this, or hey, we can help with that. And, you know, it just wasn't suitable for her. I mean, this was like a double death situation here, and I felt the weight of it on my soul. And in my head, just trying to be a poker face, you know, I'm not revealing any emotion. I'm just waiting and begging God for some kind of answer, something. What can I help this girl? How can I help her? How can I send her out of here in this state? And then I heard this really small calm. I loved what you said about you got to come under them, be calm. And this calm came over me. And the voice, it wasn't a voice, it was an impression. It was words that I knew in my spirit from the Holy Spirit. And he said, tell her about me. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I've told girls about Jesus before, but it just wasn't occurring to me. And that the whole conversation shifted. And I began to share with her the hope of Jesus Christ and how he's a miracle worker and how he can turn the dad's heart and all of these things that I knew my God could and would do. Well, she did leave that day. I really don't know what became of her, that situation, but I know that for days after, once she had left, I literally went to hands and knees on the floor, and I just sobbed and sobbed. And at that time, the director at that time came in and was worried about me, you know, like, and it was just that deep and that heavy. So if you're, you know, familiar with pregnancy center work, it's not always like that. You get it, you're out on the sidewalk, you get the level of death that's hanging in the air and that you're trying to combat. But I say all of that because that was a situation that was very real. And, you know, there are so many other things that young ladies abort for, so far less, you know, but we tend to think, well, we could handle that, you know, she should just know better, blah, blah, blah. No, that could be crushing to her, something she can't really handle, and we need to approach that in a very respectful way, because we don't know, as was already mentioned, we don't know all the baggage. We don't know where she is at intellectually. We don't know how much information she knows about her options or abortion, what it is, and all of that. So basically, when someone's world is falling apart simply because they're pregnant, it seems so easy for all of us to go. But the truth is, it really just boils down to her doing self-preservation. The world that she knew and is suddenly ending. And she's trying to stop that, and she's in a severe crisis, and she needs to hear compassion. She needs to hear hope, hope, hope. So here are some of the reasons. Let's see. Maybe it's this.
Should be on.
Which one?
There it is.
Oh, okay.
It takes a few seconds.
All righty. So here are some of the reasons why women come in and they say they abort. And there's even others that, as you were all talking, I was thinking, oh yeah, and there's this and there's that. You know, you can't list them all out, and they're all uniquely different. So some financial concerns, or that her partner, you know, is going to leave. That's coercion if they're trying to make you do something for their benefit. You know, she might fear getting kicked out of her home, or she has enough children already, or she's going to lose something, her scholarship, or her job, or promotion. If she has an abusive partner, she certainly doesn't want to be stuck with that man the rest of her life. If she's not married and he's a boyfriend, she cannot see having that baby, because now she's tethered to that man forever, as long as that child's in the scene. Go to the next one. It's not the right time. I'm not ready to be a mother yet. Like, that's pure convenience sake. And she's had several partners. She'll have it, if it's this guy's, you know, they work frantically to try and figure out the dates so they know this guy versus that guy. Not that guy, but this guy I'd have a baby with. So it's kind of a strange mentality. She doesn't want to be talked about in her family. Some of this is really cultural. You know, there's just certain cultures that are out there that just cannot fathom the negative talk about them being the center of negative attention. And she partied a lot. So she didn't even know she was pregnant, and she fears now all the drugs or the alcohol that she did in the first couple of weeks as she was pregnant is going to end up with a deformed child. And so this is more kind, you know, for her to eliminate that baby now than to head it off into a life like that. And of course, there's the rape or the date rape and the health concerns, which are far less. They're out there, but they are far less than some of happening than what some of these other things. So did you know that 64% of abortions involve coercion? 54% felt unsure about having the abortion altogether. 84% were not fully informed. They went ahead and did something. They really didn't even know what they were doing. 52% felt rushed into it. I liked what somebody said here. You don't have to make a decision today. I think it was Catherine. You know, you don't have to make a decision today. In fact, I said to somebody here already, you don't have to make a decision today about where you're going to position yourself. You can go home and you can pray about the volunteer opportunities that Joe was talking about. Let me just mention that real quick. This, if you text this is an electronic form, and it'll give you more options than what is on that paper. So if it doesn't happen to come up in this building because some of the interferences with the internet, try it again at home or let Joe know, and Joe will be able to connect you. So that was just a little extra there. Okay. So some of the common characteristics, though, as far as that coping, making a decision and how they're going to cope with it. I didn't put that on the slide, but it's rationalization. Like, aren't we excellent at rationalizing stuff we want or think we need, When we rationalize, basically what we're doing is we're blocking out our emotions from becoming involved in that decision. So the Bible tells us that that's a hardening of the heart. And when hearts are hardened, it's amazing what we are capable of doing when we never would have done it before, but we rationalized it. And then justify. If you justify, we assign legitimacy to that rationalization. It's legitimate. I have to do it, right? And so it becomes acceptable to yourself, but also I hope it becomes acceptable to you too, right? Like, you get it right. I had to do it right? And you want somebody to come alongside you, and friends will do that. I'm trying to be helpful, but they'll do that. Then there's a denial. And denial is just an emotional disconnect. It's a coping mechanism that helps us to live with our unsavory decisions. We just deny. And then, of course, secrecy. We hide the truth. We never talk about the abortion. And it perpetuates that behavior in our life. So confession is good for the soul, right? But secrecy doesn't allow us to take ownership. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to take responsibility and for any of our faults or any of our failures. And it just becomes a way of life. Abortion has not only emotional and psychological impact, but it has relational impact. It has physical and spiritual impacts in our lives. So we'll focus on a couple of the post-abortive. So post-abortion syndrome, there's a litany. I mean, there's just a whole slew. And these are just a few that are on here. Depression, regret, guilt, anxiety and paranoia. I'm post-abortive. I had a baby at 16. At 20, I chose to abort. I'm a single mom, living on my own. I'm working downtown. I hardly have 2 nickels to rub together. I mean, how am I going to take off of work when back then there was no, a paid maternity leave? How are we going to survive? Those were things that were affecting me. The anxiety, I had horrible problems with anxiety. Increased substance abuse, self-destructive behaviors, nightmares, hearing a crying baby. These are all symptoms of post-abortion syndrome, or we'll go on, it's PTSD basically. Remembering the anniversary date of your abortion or when the baby's birth date was supposed to be. Angry and blaming others. I mean, you're going to blame the bus guy or the Uber guy for taking you. I mean, it's just irrational kind of things. Fear of dying, another one of mine. Great fear of dying. Difficulty bonding with living children, and shame. Another, did you know, 65% suffer with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, which is post-abortion syndrome, a form of post-traumatic stress. Clinical depression is 65% higher after an abortion. Shame over the abortion will often prevent people from speaking out about human life issues. Like, I did this, you feel like a hypocrite if you were to say something different, or to help your daughter not do what you did, you know. Let's just talk a little bit about teens and abortion. 40% of teen abortions take place without their parents' knowledge. Since we've had that law end, it's going to go way high, way high. I mean, I've seen some things that the schools are loading up buses and taking the children to the Planned Parenthood during school. They don't have, you can't go to a field trip without a signed permission, but they can do that without your parents' knowledge legally in Illinois. It's disgusting. And more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, teens are 3 times more likely to be admitted to a mental health facility. They're at a higher risk of infertility and life-threatening complications. I think I forgot to put the one in about suicide. They're at a much higher, like 4 times higher rate of actually committing suicide. 6 times higher attempts, 4 times more likely to do it. Teens report more severe nightmares. Scores higher on the scale measuring antisocial traits, paranoia, drug abuse, and psychotic delusions than adults. Are more likely to become pregnant again within the next few years. Probably the next 1 to 2 years, really. Teens are 4 times more likely to repeat abortion.